Okay, welcome. It is June 15th, Monday. You know, we got someone signing in here, so hold on. Welcome, Gary. I was just about to get started, so. All right. So it's Monday, June 15th. We're starting of week 3 here. We've got exam 1 is due this week, so on Sunday. That's the big thing for this week. We have a wireless lab as well. It's not too complicated, but the big one is the exam. So the exam will cover chapters 10, 11, 12, and chapter 7. So all 4 chapters is 60 questions. And then you have to have Proctorio installed as well. So make sure you've got Proctorio running and set up. Before I go over some test questions on that, do you have any questions for me? Okay. Make sure you can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Just making sure, sir. All right. So then I'll go through some questions since we have no questions. Let me go hide that. Yeah.
Can you retake the exam 1?
Can you retake it?
Yeah, like for a higher grade?
No, the exams are only once. The quizzes you can take over and over to prepare for the exam, but the exams are only once.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So yeah, only one time for the exams. So what I've got here is I printed off some. I printed off an exam. So I figured we'd go through some of the questions. Some of them I can't go through because they have graphics and they don't transition over. But I basically told it to give me an exam. So this could have been your exam. It just gave me 60 questions out of the probably about 200 possible questions. So you'll get your random 60. So take the quizzes over and over to prepare for this. But all right, so in this example here is, Henry wants to build a computer that will allow him to run a hypervisor program. What does Henry not need on his computer to run the hypervisor? All right, and so yeah, I left the answer. The high-end video is the answer because you can always use RAM, you can always use storage, and you always use more processing power and cores. So one of the things when running a hypervisor is high-end video does not really help with hypervisors. Helps with other things, but not necessarily with virtual machines. All right, and then so what other name for several small utility programs are found in a control panel? All right, and so these are applets. All right, and true or false? John is trying to find everything on his computer associated with a new application that he downloaded. Is it true or false that when he uses search box in Windows 10, you can search for an app or file for its name on the web, and that is true. All right, let's see here. So in this scenario, customers looking to replace an aging network server and not able to keep up with the growing demand of the company's users, and the customer would like to add 3 additional servers to provide on-site DNS, an intranet, and file services. Technician is recommending a bare metal hypervisor as the best solution for the customer. And so then, which of the following describes the recommended solution? And so it's not, type 2, it's a type 1 hypervisor. So B, type 1 hypervisor installed directly on the serverware. That's our best choice, or that's the solution being proposed. Yeah. All right, so during your discussions with a client about a problem with his computer, you realize that he's explaining a problem you've seen several times. What should you do when you realize you understand the problem, right? So it's basically you should continue to listen. So actively listen to the client until he finishes explaining the problem. B. So B is the best choice here, right? You definitely don't want to ignore what he says or you interrupt them. Let's see here. All right, so a technician is using a network attached desktop computer with a type 2 hypervisor to run 2 VMs, and one VM is infected with multiple worms, and the other forms of known malware. Second VM is a clean installation of Windows, and the technician has been tasked with logging the impact of the clean Windows VM when the infected VM attempts to infiltrate a clean VM through the network. What should the technician do to best protect the company LAN while performing these tests? And the best answer here is to place both VMs on a virtual NIC that are isolated from the company's LAN. Technically, you really only need to isolate the infected computer, but since that's not an option, you can go ahead and isolate both machines. So D is the best choice here. All right, what is the maximum number of partitions allowed using the GUID partition table, GPT, for partition a drive for Windows? And we can do 128 partitions on Windows using the GUID type partition. MBR is 4, but the newer type GUID is 28. What term refers to a major update release on Windows 7? And that is a service pack. A service pack is a major update release on Windows 7. Let's see here. Jacob wants to set up extra security for his wireless network. He currently uses WPA2, and he wants to allow only his devices to connect to the network and reject devices that he does not own. What extra wireless security should Jacob employ on his wireless router? And that's MAC filtering. We can specify the MAC addresses of the cards that are allowed to connect to the wireless access point, and thus, if the MAC address is not in the list, they don't get access. All right. your company is implementing a wireless network and is concerned that someone from a competing company could stand outside the building and collect wireless data. You've assured the company that WPA2 is secure. And then what makes WPA2 more secure than WPA? And that is it uses a better encryption, the AES encryption. So B is its answer. And so then John recently upgraded to Windows 8 from Windows 8.1 to 10. And after the upgrade is completed, on the right-hand side of his desktop, there's a new area that contains a way to toggle several Windows features on and off, access the Settings app, and view the notifications. What is this area called? And it's this area over here. All right. Excuse me. Over here, Action Center. The C, the Action Center. A help desk technician needs to run a virtual machine on her laptop computer for several upcoming training sessions, and which of the following must be completed before she can use virtualization on her laptop. And so then that's to enable virtualization. So you many times, most of the time, in the UEFI or the BIOS, the motherboard manufacturer has disabled virtualization. So you need to go in and turn that on before you can use virtualization. All right, the master boot record, or MBR, the old style method of partitioning hard drives, is limited to what maximum size of hard drives? And that's B, the 2.2 terabytes. Which of the following is the correct order for the steps of laser printers? All right. So you got processing that receives the job, right? It charges and then exposes the job onto the drum, and then it develops, then it transfers, and then it fuses to the paper, and then it cleans the drum. So E is the answer, right? So we're processing, charging, exposing, developing, transferring, fusing, and cleaning. All right, so a company is hiring several remote employees who will be working primarily from their homes, but will need to come into the office once a month. The company is providing the workers with laptop computers and wants a way for them to access their email account, whether they are at home or on the road or in the office. Which of the following solutions will be the best solution? And then, so the book is, this is going to be an off-site email. Basically, I would I would say a cloud email probably too, but not necessarily off-site. But yeah. But I guess I see where the book is going with that. Because the VDI, VDI could solve the problem too, but it's more expensive. But private cloud really isn't going to help you because it's got private, and so you still have to have a way that it's same accessible from home or on the road as it is in the office. So I mean, since we're only just talking about email, the offsite email is the solution that we would go after. If they were talking about other applications, then VDI wins, because then they can get their virtual desktop from anywhere. All right. So Kathy wants to connect to her wireless LAN at home, but is not sure where to change the settings so that she can connect. Where in the Windows control panel will Kathy find her computer's network connection settings? All right, so it is in the network and sharing center. All right, so all these other options are not, and it's not valid or isn't going to help you, but the network sharing center is where you'll find your network settings. And an easy way to get there is right here on the lower hand corner, and get up here, but you can get to your network settings. But from control panel, it's network sharing. So, network and sharing center is what they're talking about here from the control panel. I like the fact that Microsoft's put the easy access to the network here, but all right. Okay, so this one, where should a user disable virus protection settings that might prevent the boot area of the hard drive from being altered? And that's in the BIOS and UEFI setup. That's where you can deal with that. 18, the answer is B, but the picture didn't show up. B was the phone. So we're just going to skip that because there's no picture for it. If using a dual or multi-boot configuration, what screen appears during the boot sequence? And that's the bootloader menu. That's what's going to appear when you got a multi-boot. A company is utilizing servers, data storage, data backups, software development platforms over an internet connection. Which of the following describes the company's approach to computing resources? And it's using cloud computing. So all these servers, data storage, data backup exists somewhere out in the cloud, right? And they access it over internet connection. So they're using cloud computing. Let's see here. Manager in a small office is asking if it is possible to limit network access to a particular website during business hours. Apparently, several users are spending an excessive amount of time on the site, preventing them from completing their work-related tasks. The following is the best solution to accomplish the request from the manager while not limiting access to other websites. And so you can implement a blacklist on the firewall and add the site the users are visiting to the blacklist so that nobody can go to that site. Right, so this A is kind of, there are content filters available, so I don't like that answer because because they say that it's on the PC, so the content filters wouldn't be on the PCs; it would be an external device. So I don't like that one for that reason, but there are content filtering that would resolve this issue, but not in the manner that they're talking about. But so a blacklist, though, does work. Oops, I'm on the wrong screen. All right. A technician is configuring a new SOHO multifunction wireless router at the customer's location to provide network access to several wireless devices. The technician is required to protect the customer's private network from unauthorized access while performing the initial router setup, as well as during the normal operations after configuration is completed. Which of the following is the best step for the technician to take in securing the router to meet this requirement? All right. So configuring MAC filtering on the router to only the technician's computer won't help, because that's not going to help for normal operations, because then only his computer could access it. Disabling the router's radio in the wireless network setting would just be pointless, because now it's not going to work. Enable DHCP on the router and configure IP address reservations for the wireless clients. It's not going to help anything. And then change the router's default administrative password. That at least protects it, while he's working on it and after he leaves. So at least it's not the default. So, I mean, while it's not earth-shattering, it's the best way to secure it. Okay. Software developer is testing an application on a Windows 10 desktop computer. Needs to perform testing of this same application on Windows 7, Windows 8, and Linux systems. Due to company policy, the developer must use her existing computer and must be disconnected from the company network while performing these tests. So the following will best meet the requirements while providing the developer the same level of usability she is accustomed to. Well, we can rule out the A, because type 1 would require it to have no operating system, where it's their laptop that already has a operating system. So we need a type 2 hypervisor, right? Or you could create a multi-boot system with Windows 10, 8, and 7, and then create a Linux. That's a lot. That it's not the best solution. I mean, you could actually do the multi-boot with the Linux, and create VMs for the others. I mean, that might work better. But yeah, it's okay. It's just another type 1 hypervisor doesn't work. Install a type 2 hypervisor and create the VMs, all the Windows and the Linux VMs. I mean, that's your best solution, especially since you have that many machines that you want to. What is it called when a partition is formatted with a file system and assigned a drive letter? That's called a volume, right? So we call that a volume when we've got a file system and assigned a drive letter. It's a volume. Which of the following is centrally hosted and managed desktop environment with the capabilities of spanning multiple offices across various countries, in which each user's desktop instance is dynamically provisioned, right? And that's the virtual desktop environment, the VDI, right? You might use a VPN, but it's VDI is the actual infrastructure that provides desktop experience in that manner. Manuel is working on a project in Visual Studio. He wants to keep this program showing on the entire desktop, but he also needs to have several other applications open so he can research the project. What feature in Windows 10 will allow Manuel to view Visual Studio on the full desktop and have other applications open at the same time? And that's the task view, B. That's another one, or no, I'm sorry, there's another cable one, but this one. Which of the following will use an RJ11 connector for connectivity? And that's DSL. It uses a phone line, a standard phone line, or RJ11 connector. The help desk received a call from a user who cannot get any print jobs to print on the locally shared printer. While questioning the user, the technician determines that no users can print to the printer, and the printer indicates it's offline. Technician instructs the users on how to place the printer in the online mode, but the print jobs are still not printing on the printer. So the following is the best next step to resolve the issue. Right? Would power cycle the printer. Replacing the toner cartridge is not going to help. Delete and recreating the printer share is not going to help because it's on more than one user. Replace the printer cable. It may be, but I'd rather start the printer first. William's supervisor wants to create a test lab at the company in order to test Windows 10 updates. He has instructed William to create a virtual lab. William decides to use Hyper-V as the hypervisor for the virtual machines. When William tries to use Hyper-V, he realized that it's not installed. What will William use to install Hyper-V in Windows 10? And I don't like that they didn't tell us which version, but assuming he's got Windows 10 Pro or Enterprise, he can go to the Windows features and install Hyper-V. But if he has Home Edition, I don't believe Hyper-V is included with Windows 10 Home. But if you have Professional, it is included, and you can install it in the Windows features, from the Windows features. The laser printer in your accounting department is printing faded prints, and they're getting lighter over time. What's most likely reason? And it's just the printer's low on toner, right? Most likely reason. Henry's troubleshooting network connection, wants to see if he can connect to the server on his network. Which Microsoft command should Henry use to check whether he can connect to the server? And that would be the ping command if it's available on your network. Most networks and even Microsoft by default disable this. But if it is enabled, it is a great way to test connectivity. But one thing, like Windows 10 default installs the Windows Firewall, and Windows Firewall will block pings. So if you're trying to ping a workstation, a Windows 10 installation, make sure you've enabled ICMP through the firewall, or the ping won't work. You won't get any replies. All right, the 32 is the picture. It was an R45 cable, but there's no picture. So, customer states that when she removes the printed pages from her laser printer output tray, the blank ink smears all over her fingers, which she'll find is most likely problem. And that's the fuser unit, right? It's not heating the ink and melting it to the H. So the fuser is most likely bad, not getting hot enough. All right. Patrick is working on a computer that is having wireless network connection issues. Patrick decides that he needs to take the laptop with him to repair it and then return it to the user. While Patrick is replacing the wireless network card, he receives a phone call from the user. The user wants to know where the laptop is because he's leaving on a business trip that day and needs the computer. What should Patrick have done to avoid this situation? And basically, talk with the customer, figure out, but offer the user different repair options. I mean, that's the best answer here, because he should have negotiated with Patrick and found out when, how long he could have the laptop. Um, A laser printer is displaying a message indicating a maintenance kit is due for replacement, which the following will be part of the replacement process. Um, Maintenance kits are usually, yeah, so it's a laser printer, so we don't have print ribbons, we don't have a print head, so A and B are out. We will reset the page counter, and you will not clean the heating element, so you reset the page counter as part of performing maintenance on a printer, and that just sets the counter to tell you when you need another kit. A technician is installing a hypervisor on a host system with a single physical NIC, and that runs a high bandwidth network application. The host NIC or network card is running at optimum bandwidth and cannot support additional network traffic. The technician will be configuring 8 network VMs that will be interconnected and on their own dedicated virtual subnet separated from the existing physical LAN subnet. When networking the VMs, what will the technician need to do to guarantee that the host network's performance is not affected without any complexity or additional cost to the host configuration? So this is a very interesting scenario where the network card of the host is pretty much saturated, but you're creating 8 VMs on the host that are just going to talk to each other. That's our parameters. So you won't be connecting them to a physical switch port because you're not connecting them to the physical LAN. You're isolating the VM virtual NICs from the physical NIC. That sounds plausible, right? And then install one new physical NIC for each VM. That's massive overkill for cost, and once again, we're not connecting to the physical network, so that's not going to help. And then connect only the VMs that are running on the host physical. Connect only the VMs that are running on the physical network, and that's not going to solve it, right? So we want to isolate all the virtual NICs from the physical NIC, and that's creating its own, subnet, or depending on what type of hypervisor you have, but there'll be some ways of creating and making sure the virtual NICs were on their own virtual subnet and not connected to the physical NIC. Once again, very unusual scenario, but that was the scenario. A small group of travelers is meeting inside an ancient building, and the travelers need access to the internet using their mobile devices. However, the group is in an area where Wi-Fi internet is not available and cellular coverage is intermittent. One of the travelers has an unlimited cellular data plan and a strong distance signal, even though it's intermittent, right? So, but anyway, one of them miraculously has a non-intermittent strong signal. Which of the following methods would most likely be implemented to provide internet service to the group? And then there would be, if their plan allows it, a mobile hotspot. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that question. Which of the following printer issues is most likely resolved by performing a calibrate function on a laser or inkjet printer? All right, so you run a calibrate function basically to match up your colors and your print and make sure your printing is correct. So it's misaligned colors on a print page is the issue that you would be looking to address, right? Misaligned printing, misaligned colors, making the print page better is the calibrate feature. All these others are talking about paper and things like that. It's not going to help. A client is requesting an internet connection type that is not affected by atmospheric conditions and is always on. Which of the following will meet those requirements? Cellular hotspots aren't always on. Satellites are always on, but I'm thinking with atmospheric conditions that they can have some issues. Cable is always on, and dial-up is not. It's connect when needed. So C, cable, is our answer here because it's always on and it doesn't have this atmospheric conditions issue that satellite does, besides being just a better, higher quality connection. What type of software is used to control a computer? And well, it's about our class, right? It's an operating system. Will control our computer, although interface is questionable, but the correct term that the book's looking for is the operating system. Just always concerned with questions where they give answers but it's like, well, what's the best answer? Technician is troubleshooting a printer connected to a computer via USB. The printer will print using the controls at the printer, but fails to print from the computer. Which of the following steps should be taken next? Make sure the USB cable is attached. That's a good option. Make sure printing paper is installed. Well, we just printed. It's got paper. Check low memory errors on the printer. It was just printed, so we're not having any errors. And verify the printer is on. So, well, we already know it's on. We just printed. So, check the cable. 42. The receptionist directly connected laser printer is printing blank sheets. The technician assigned to the trouble ticket has replaced the toner. Our blank pages continue to print from the receptionist's PC. Which of the following steps should be performed next? Okay. All right. Start here. Remove the fuser. You're going to clean the fuser rollers. You're not going to want to touch the fuser rollers ever, and unless you wait hours for them to cool down. So that's out. Redirect the print to the primary LPT port. That you're getting connectivity is printing out blank. Print a test page from the printer's console. I like that just to see, is there something wrong with the printer itself? Can it print, right? And flip the paper over in the tray, but that's not going to help in any way because the paper in the laser printer is double-sided. You can put it either way. In fact, you print on both sides. So, and a lot of laser printers have duplexing and can print on both sides. So, which of the following components provide the physical network connectivity for a virtual machine managed by a Type 2 hypervisor to connect to the Ethernet switch via USB cable? So, which of the following provides the physical network connectivity for a virtual machine? All right. So we've got a Type 2 hypervisor. So we have an OS already, and you have a host machine, right? So the actual cable, so that's going to be the host computer's physical network interface, right? So that's what's connected physically to the network, and that provides our connectivity to the VMs for virtual machines. Is the host computer's physical network cable, a network card. Which of the following can provide a user with cloud-based application that is integrated with a cloud-based virtual storage service and can be accessed through a web browser? So that should be our software as a service, right? So it's integrated with the cloud-based virtual storage service and access to the web browser, right? So it's a whole solution, cloud application, right? All right, you are setting up your Windows computer to connect to the internet, and notice that when you type www.microsoft.com, the browser does not go to the site. Instead, you receive an error message saying that the address cannot be resolved. What network settings should you check to see the address of the server being used to resolve this address? And so basically you want to know what the DNS servers that's being used, because that's our domain name service, right? DNS. You would check and see. That's really not going to help you too much, but use the NS lookup tool and query the DNS server quiz. But yeah, and that would definitely not be my first go-to, is to see what the DNS server is, but it can be that the problem is the DNS server, but I would use NS lookup to actually see what's going on, and then that would also tell me what DNS server I was using too. But anyway, a remote worker wants to connect his computer to his corporate private trusted network over the internet. Which of the following will need to be configured? And that's a virtual private network tunnel, a VPN tunnel, right? So enough on that. All right, you are on a committee tasked with researching and recommending a service that will allow employees the opportunity to save files from their mobile phones, laptop computers, workstation computers to cloud file storage services. Which of the following will need to be researched and considered in order to make a comprehensive recommendation? All right. So this is, they want to save files from their phones, laptops, computers, workstations, cloud file storage. And so it's not a type 1 hypervisor, because that's for big solutions where you're going to do servers or do multiple production level virtualization of servers or workstations. That's when you would use that. So of course we're not going to use the offsite email application because, well, this is a storage server, right? We're not going to use a type 2 hypervisor because that's when we're going to use for development, testing, things like that. And virtualization application streaming, we're not going to use that because we're just saving files, right? So we're looking for more of a synchronization app. I mean, that's a roundabout way to kind of go around it, but I mean, I don't like any of the answers here, but synchronizing app is about as good as it gets. Oh, man, wrong screen. Which of the following is a cloud computing element that gives a service provider the ability to dynamically allocate shared physical resources to multiple customers based on each customer's usage. Yeah, okay, so it is a measured service, right? So based on their usage, I mean, and once again, usage, ability to dynamic allocate physical resources based on each customer's usage demand, right? It should be the measured service, yeah. Or if we were billing, but it is so they're sharing the resources, so it'd be resource pooling. Sorry, that is a quite right. So you're pooling the resources, and you can give it to whoever needs whatever dynamically, right? So it's pooling, resource pooling. It all depends on how you're going to build them too. But yeah, so resource pooling gives you the ability to dynamically allocate. Because yeah, they're not talking about billing; they're talking about allocation. So, which of the following wireless network protocols uses LTE technology with the maximum speed of 1 gigabit? So 1 gigabit LTE is the 4th generation, right? And, all right. Wanda wants to find some basic information about her computer. For example, what operating systems and how much RAM are installed. Where can Wanda find this information, right? So that's in the this system window, right? You can get in the system information too, right? But well, that's not what I want. But you can get all kinds of information from the systems window as far as that. So operating system, RAM. Best way I get to it is this right here. This is a system window. I just go to the File Explorer, right click on this PC, go to Properties. That's how I do it. I mean, you can type in System Information. That's a different window. That's a different window. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure there's other ways to get to it, but I just go this way to get to the system window because it tells you, the operating system, how much RAM's installed. All right. Sam would like to install a new application on every computer in his Soho network. All of the computers are currently connected in a work group. What is the easiest way for Sam to install the application on all the computers, right? So there's no great way, but because it's not a work group, but using a shared network. A network share to share the installation files would probably be the best way. Definitely not a USB to every computer or copy into DVD. The network share would probably be the easiest. It would be easier in a domain, but you can do it in a work group. You just have to map a drive on each one. Whereas with a domain, you don't have to really map the drive. You can just type in the network location. Whereas with a work group, you'd have to map the drive, and or at least enter in the username and password every time you went to each machine. Whereas in the domain, it just would show up if you had access, which would be nice. But then you can also push it out within a domain. A user is unable to install virtualization software on a Windows 8.1 computer. The user verified the host has sufficient RAM, plenty available free disk, and a multi-core processor. Which of the following is the most likely cause for this behavior? Windows 8 does support Type 2 hypervisor, so that's not A. The motherboard does not support hardware-assisted virtualization. That is very likely the issue, or it's turned off. User does not have a product key. You don't need a product key to install. And the system is incompatible with Type 1, and that's incorrect. We've already got 8.1 installed. So it's the motherboard does not support hardware-assisted virtualization, or it's off. One of the users in your company is asking if he can install an app on his company-provided mobile device. The installation of apps by the users is blocked on the company's mobile devices, but you have tested and confirmed this app would be useful for everyone. Which of the following will allow users to request a minimum version of the app that downloads only what is required to run? And then that's this application streaming, right? So that's a solution for applications. It downloads the minimal version of the app, and it runs out in the cloud. You're installing several VMs on your desktop computer and need to determine whether your system can support running all the VMs at the same time. Your host operating system is Windows 10 Pro, and your system has 16 gigs of physical RAM installed. Which of the following is the best approach in making this determination, assuming dynamic allocation of RAM is disabled? All right, so you're just trying to determine, can you run all the VMs and your machine with the 16 gigs of RAM? So you're going to add up the minimum RAM for each machine, and then add in the RAM for your machine, and then do you have any extra RAM available, right? I wouldn't want it to be exact. I'd want a little bit more, but still, you want it to be equal. So then it would be right. So it looks like B. Add up the required RAM for each of the guest VM operating systems you want to run at the same time, and then add the RAM required by your host OS. So B. That's what you would want to do. Which of the following aspects of cloud computing allows a service provider to limit a customer's use of a particular resource based on a service agreement between the provider and the customer? All right, so to limit a customer's use, right, so that's measured, right? So right, you have a certain limit, right, it's measured. Which of the following technologies can provide an application to remote users without the need to install the application on the user's system? All right, so we're talking about applications and virtualization, right? So application virtualization. One of your sales employees is taking a trip to some conventions over the next several weeks and will need to have access to a printer at each of the locations. Each of the convention centers will be providing hassle-free printing for all Apple computer and iOS mobile device users. Which of the following technologies will most likely be used to provide print services? And that's going to be the AirPrint, Apple AirPrint, right? So yeah, these others just aren't even close, but yeah, so AirPrint as a service for Apple, and that's exactly what they're using. So, Mary, a remote user, connects her Windows 10 laptop to a corporate network by way of internet using a VPN tunnel. Which of the following is often configured as a required step for a user each time she attempts to use the VPN connection? And so that's basically you're going to log in, right? You're going to have to log in. Enter the same username and password based on the corporate network. You need to log in and authenticate to the network. You're not going to call the help desk every time. You're not going to have to configure a static IP address. You may, no, it's not even made required. You may be required at home, but you may not to connect over a VPN. Select the encryption and authentication methods in the connection properties. No, each time it's going to be when you set up your VPN, that's the encryption authentication method is set up for that VPN connection. It's only one type, so you're not going to be selecting it. So yeah, you're going to log in, which is D. A small company has hired you to take over its IT needs. The company currently has 7 on-site employees and 12 remote employees working from their homes and is looking to hire an additional 20 employees in the next 6 to 8 months. The owners of the company are asking you to obtain a business service that will meet the needs of the current staff as well as scale up when the company grows. The service must provide adequate and scalable computing power and storage. Right? Which cloud service model should you implement? And I will argue with the book a little bit because technically IaaS and SaaS could provide this solution. IaaS is probably better because you're talking about scaling compute power and storage, so it's a better answer. But your compute power and storage scales on a software as a service because the company's providing it for you. So depending on what kind of applications and all that, B and C technically are good answers. But because we're talking compute power and storage, I'm going to lean towards B as being the best answer. But I dislike it when they have questions that really you have another answer that is technically suitable, because software as a service, the vendor is providing the compute and storage, and you don't have to worry about it, and it scales without you having to worry about it. But you might have to have 3 or, if they asked it, you needed only one vendor, then IaaS is definitely the best choice. But you could probably do the same thing with a SaaS solution. You just might have to have 5 or 10 different vendors. But anyway, so answer is B for that solution because you want it to scale. You want computing power and storage to be able to scale. So you want infrastructure as a service. And our last question here, what component of UEFI helps to prevent malware from hijacking a system during or before the operation system's load? And that's our secure boot, right? So we have a secure boot process, and that helps prevent malware from hijacking the system during and before the operating system is loaded. So that is an example exam. So you may get many of these same questions, many of these may be on the exam that you get when you take the exam. Like I said, I just had it give me 60 questions and give me an exam, and basically just took the exam and just copied them down and put it into Word here. So this comes from the test bank. So the best way though to study, I can't stress it enough, is to take the quizzes. You're able to take them unlimited amount of times. You'll see all the questions in the test bank for each chapter, which those are the same questions that will be on the exam. So that's all I have tonight. Are there any questions? Anyone online that has any questions or anything they want to discuss? Questions here. Okay. Go ahead, Gary.
Now, if we get a question wrong, is it counted against us, or is it just like the regular quizzes? It's just whatever you get right.
Right. Right. It's just whatever you get right. So go ahead and guess. Yeah. Right. You're not, guessing's not going to hurt you. I mean, because no answer is a point off, or a wrong answer is a point off. So you only get the points for what you got right. It's just like the quizzes.
Okay. Now I have another question.
Sure.
Now, is the exam similar to these questions, or is it just all over the place? It's not in order.
Right, it's not in order. Right, right. So I basically went into Blackboard and clicked on the exam 1 link, and it gave me 60 questions an exam, just like you'll do. You'll click on the exam 1 link, and it'll grab 60 questions. So they'll go in different orders, but there's like 200 and some questions in the bank, and so it just randomly selects 60 for you when you hit the exam. But that's what I did for this. I mean, it just randomly pulled 60 questions out for me. But yeah, so it's random. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, sure. All right. If there's no other questions, I'll stop the recording, and then